The Reconquista, Conquest, Inquisition, and Armada. All these concepts are pivotal in the history of the country, occupying a significant portion of the Iberian Peninsula. Today, we will delve into the history of Spain, starting from ancient times. The history of this country traces back to the Phoenicians, who founded colonies on the southern coast of the Iberian Peninsula approximately 1,000 years before our era. Among the cities they founded were Cartagena, Córdoba, and Cádiz, which still retain their greatness and rich history to this day. Through the Mediterranean Sea and the Strait of Gibraltar, active trade routes traversed. Following the First Punic War, Hannibal expanded Carthaginian territories eastward on the peninsula. However, just 20 years after Hannibal's defeat in the Second Punic War, control over the Pyrenees began shifting to the Romans. By the beginning of our era, Spain was firmly under Roman control, becoming the second most significant region of the Roman Empire after the Italian peninsula. It's noteworthy that 3 out of the 5 good emperors of Rome hailed from Spain: Trajan, Hadrian, and Marcus Aurelius. This, coupled with subsequent events, renders modern Spain more akin to the heir of the Roman Empire than Italy. Even after the brief reign of the Goths alongside the Romans, Spain also hosted a Byzantine presence. During this time, the southern part of the empire was controlled by a surviving faction of the Roman Empire, invited by the rebellious aristocrat Achilles, who revolted against Achilles. The Byzantines managed to hold their ground in southern Spain for 50 years, largely due to the preservation of Roman order in these lands. Strong trade connections with Constantinople also played a significant role. By the beginning of the 7th century, the Visigoths displaced the Byzantines from the peninsula, restoring peace to Spanish lands, albeit temporarily. In 711, with the arrival of an Arab force under the command of Tariq ibn Ziyad at the Strait of Gibraltar, the Muslim conquest of the Iberian Peninsula began, marking the onset of Muslim invasion into Spain. This period eventually led to one of the most prolonged historical periods in Spanish history, the Reconquista. The Reconquista became one of the most complex and enduring campaigns for freedom and independence. The Moors swiftly conquered all Visigothic lands, except for a small strip in the north of the peninsula, in the region of Asturias, which became the stronghold and starting point of the Reconquista for the following centuries. The Moors also attempted to advance further into Europe, but were halted and defeated by the army of Charles Martel in 732 at the Battle of Tours, when they sought to plunder the French provinces adjacent to the Pyrenees. The rise of Christian Spain occurred in the 11th century due to the efforts of Kings Alfonso V, Sancho III, and Ferdinand I. They made various but extremely important contributions to the formation of a unified and free Spanish state, ranging from enacting laws to compelling the Moors to pay tribute. However, in the late 12th century, there was a setback in the Reconquista, which, despite its temporary nature, had a significant impact on Spain's history. The decisive event came on July 16, 1212, at the Battle of Las Navas de Tolosa in the Talas Valley. An army primarily composed of troops from the states of the Iberian Peninsula, as well as crusaders, knights from various orders, and Christians from different countries, achieved victory over the Moorish army. Over the next 20 years, Spain was almost entirely liberated from Arab rule. The last Moorish state, the Emirate of Granada, finally ceased to exist in 1492, marking the end of the era of the Reconquista. Another significant event at the end of the Reconquista was the unification of the largest kingdoms of the Iberian Peninsula into a single Spanish kingdom. This occurred in 1469 through the marriage between Queen Isabella I of Castile and Leon and King Ferdinand II of Castile, Aragon, Sicily, and Naples. Simultaneously with the completion of the Reconquista began the era of Spanish conquest of America. In 1492, Christopher Columbus, funded for an expedition to India, instead discovered the islands of the Caribbean basin and South and North America. Although Columbus believed he had reached India area and not a new continent. This did not hinder the beginning of Spanish colonization of America. This period was called the Conquest, and its direct participants were conquistadors, mostly knights who had completed the Reconquista. A significant role in the influx of conquistadors was played by the fact that Spaniards outside of Europe were freed from the royal and ecclesiastical authority of the Spanish crown. Enterprising Spaniards ventured into the New World in search of the untold wealth of its indigenous inhabitants. Spanish conquistadors, despite their numerical minority, conquered the Aztecs, Incas, and Mayans. The most famous leaders of the conquest were Hernán Cortés, Hernando de Córdoba, and Francisco de Montejo. With the era of the conquest came the Golden Age of Spain, during which the Spanish crown became the most powerful political entity in Europe. However, this period did not last long. As a result of dynastic marriages, Charles V of the Habsburg dynasty ascended to the Spanish throne, also becoming the Holy Roman Emperor in 1519. He left Spanish territories, though remaining King of Spain, which sparked mass discontent among the Spanish populace. This led to the uprising of Castilian cities known as the Comuneros Revolt. Their demands included the direct rule of the king in Spain, the replacement of foreign officials with Spanish ones in leading positions, the weakening of absolutism, and the regular convening of the Cortes parliaments. The revolt was suppressed, but shortly after, Charles V issued a decree of full amnesty, significantly reducing the privileges of the nobility. Additionally, funds were allocated by the Cortes to support Charles in his war against France. Nevertheless, even this did not prevent Spain from reaching its peak in the 16th century, largely due to its colonies. For a brief period, Spain even managed to capture Portugal and annex Portuguese overseas territories. Among the reasons for the decline of Spain, which began in the late 16th century, several key factors can be highlighted. The first one is the societal division between those who had access to the wealth brought from the colonies and those who did not. This division led to a situation where one part of the population literally had nothing to eat, while the other part feasted endlessly. This echoed the fate of the Roman Empire, where inequality was one of the main reasons for its decline. The second reason can be attributed to the reckless spending of the gold flowing into the treasury from the New World. The Spanish crown spent this wealth on sponsoring the dominance of the Habsburgs in Europe and supporting the Catholic Church in establishing its supremacy. This led to a situation where the country's economy did not receive investments, and trade and crafts, instead of developing, began to decline. Trade cities, lacking support and investments, continued to play an important political role, but their position as trade and craft centers was not strengthened. As a result, these factors became the main reasons for Spain's decline in the late 16th century. Another significant reason for the decline was a national issue. After the completion of the Reconquista, Muslims who converted to Christianity and remained in Spain continued to work diligently. However, the state viewed them as an unreliable segment of society, which often led to the confiscation of their property, increased taxes, and various forms of persecution. This population group was often referred to as Moriscos, which translates to Little Moors. Moreover, many trading points and a significant portion of markets were owned by Moriscos. Thus, the suppression of this population group led to negative consequences, including worsening economic conditions and social instability. With the decline of the economy, Spain began to lose its influence on the international stage. Attempts to interfere in the religious affairs of other countries also ended unsuccessfully. For example, the defeat of its fleet, the Invincible Armada, in 1588 by the English fleet, became one of the symbols of decline. Pirates, especially notable figures like Francis Drake and Walter Raleigh, stood out among these events. Although formally they were not recognized as pirates, but carried the title of privateers, they continued to commit acts of piracy, sparing only the ships of the English crown and its allies. These events further undermined Spain's pride and intensified its decline. The 17th century brought nothing but defeats to the Spanish monarchy. At the beginning of the century, Spain, once one of the wealthiest countries in Europe, went bankrupt. To compensate for this, there were further mass confiscations of property from the Moriscos, followed by their expulsion from the country. However, even this did not help restore the country's financial health. The trading cities, once vibrant and prosperous, fell into decline. In the 1640s, Portugal separated from Spain, and Catalonia rose in rebellion, becoming de facto independent for 12 years. The Netherlands also became dependent on the Spanish crown. Although the monarchy managed to avoid complete collapse, it was at the expense of renouncing Portugal. There were no longer any ambitions for greatness. In 1700, the last representative of the Habsburg dynasty on the Spanish throne, Charles II, died. Due to the lack of heirs, the country plunged into a 14-year war for the Spanish inheritance. The victor of this war was France, which placed Philip V from the Bourbon dynasty on the Spanish throne, thus magnifying its influence. With the arrival of the first Bourbons on the Spanish throne, positive changes began to unfold across various aspects of the country's life. The role of the church was weakened, the state apparatus was rejuvenated, and trade flourished once again. However, this period of prosperity was short-lived, and by the late 18th century, Spain slipped back into recession. In the early 19th century, the country formed an alliance with Napoleonic France. However, the populace decided not to tolerate another intervention by external forces in their affairs. From 1808 to 1813, the Peninsular War erupted to thwart the victory of the French. Alongside industrious Spaniards, Russians joined the struggle against the French and defeated Napoleon's army. The French were forced to retreat from the Iberian Peninsula. Over the subsequent 100 years, Spain once again grappled with civil wars, periodic changes in government, and political uncertainty. In 1875, stability returned to Spain. Under the leadership of Cánovas del Castillo, the government implemented the Turno Pacifico plan, which established a two-party system in the country. Within this system, liberal, conservative, and liberal parties were supposed to alternate in power to prevent political disagreements that could lead to a new civil war. However, this plan effectively implied election fraud and deprived other political forces of the opportunity to come to power. Until the beginning of the 20th century, this plan helped Spain avoid major internal conflicts and ensured stability in the political system. The country began to develop again. Industries and trade grew, and the Pyrenees became a popular tourist destination. Various reforms, including judicial ones, were implemented. However, Spain soon found itself on the brink of decline once again. Defeat in the Spanish-American War, internal uprisings, and the crisis following World War I negatively affected the country. This series of events led to a full-scale civil war in the mid-1930s, the results of which shaped the face and life of Spain for the following decades. Thank you, dear friends, for joining me on this fascinating journey through history. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss new videos about exciting events and facts from the past. Also, leave your comments below this video. I'm always happy to hear your thoughts, suggestions, and requests for topics for future videos. See you all again on the channel.